It's time for This Week in the Lakeville Journal, and if everything worked out all right, I have Cynthia Hauswinter on the line. Cynthia, good morning.
Good morning.
And Janet Manker. Good morning, Janet.
Good morning.
And happy holidays to one and all.
Yes, happy holidays.
Because right there on the front page, 'tis the season.
'Tis the season, and we had, I would say this was a slightly wacky year for holiday festivities. It was not like last year, which was truly wacky, but slightly unbalanced compared to what we normally have. In normal years, Salisbury, of course, is the big draw with singing and the tree lighting and Santa at the White Hart. This year, that did not happen. The Ladies Auxiliary at the hose company stepped in and did very quickly a really complete, wonderful day at the firehouse on Saturday, December 4th. But the big winner, the big draw this holiday season was Sharon, which had this beautiful luminaria display on the green, which had activities at the Historical Society and the library. The Historical Society, I think, was long planned. The library, I think my sense was that it was later in joining the plan because, of course, the plan renovation is going on, so the library is actually now over at the Herbert Klebs VFW Hall around the corner. But they stepped up, and I believe that the renovation actually is stalled at the moment. You probably know more about that than I do. Somebody just explained it to me, and we'll do a story on it coming up. But I believe there's no work going on there yet, but I digress. So lots and lots of people showed up for that Sharon tree lighting, and dozens of pictures of it on Instagram, and a lot of our new residents of the region going, oh, wow, I get it. I didn't just buy a house. I've bought into a community that's really wonderful.
And you know, ever since last year when they started the luminaries, and they had 1,200 last year, and this year they had 1,600 luminaries. And this is a fundraiser for the ambulance squad. Those luminaries, along with the tree being lit, and along with the Historical Society, have now slowly turned Sharon's turnout from maybe 100, 150 to hundreds and hundreds of people. And Salisbury will be back there once again, where they can do it on the green, around the tree, and everything like that. That's a magical location in itself. It really is. So.
And Salisbury is always a big attraction, and I'd like to point out, of course, Carl Chayette once again has the menorah out on the green for this year's very early Hanukkah celebration.
Yeah. So yeah, there was a lot of different types of celebrations this year, but it's the season nonetheless. Mm-hmm. I just came from my, not today, but the other day from my doctor's office, and he was talking about COVID and COVID-19 and the different variants that are now in town. And what I found out, which I didn't realize, is that Litchfield County, Northwest Connecticut, has one of the highest rates now, percentage of positive tests. Last week it was 8.5%. I think this week it went down to 8%. What they're finding out is, of course, more people are starting to once again get it, but it appears that the vaccinations and whatever the people are doing, people are not getting as sick as they initially thought they would with this new variant.
And, of course, all these statistics are always very complex, and so 8% is a super high percent, but it's also not the highest number, so it's not as though there's thousands and thousands of sick infected people here, but still, that's a pretty high percent.
And
I just got my booster shot on Tuesday. A lot of the towns are stepping up and doing vax clinics, not just for adults but also for children. We have information on those clinics in this article, which notes that we had our first positive test for Omicron variant in the state, somebody that was fully vaccinated and whose family member had been at a convention in New York City. And so we all have to remember, you still got to wear your mask. It's still important to socially distance when you're out. And there are more vax clinics coming up, including one in Salisbury at the Grove on the 28th. And speaking from experience, it's nicely organized and a delight.
And Region 1 had two vax clinics for young children yesterday, and there's a whole list of vaccination clinics they've got coming up through January, solely for Northwest Corner residents, and you have to have a guardian, you have to have a signed thing, but for the 5 to 11 age group. So Region 1 has stepped forward and done a really good job in trying to make it a little easier for parents to get their children vaccinated. We'll go down to your story on Nuvance. They are, defending their hiring efforts and defending the ability to close labor and delivery in their presentations to the public. This is really going to be interesting to see how it all plays out when it does get in front of the state.
This is two dovetailing investigations from the Office of Health Strategy. The New Vance Hospital Medical Group is applying now to close the labor and delivery unit at Sharon Hospital and also to reduce intensive care and surgery hours. And they have to get a certificate of need approved. Parallel to that, somebody had complained to the Office of Health Strategy, officially complained, not called up and complained, and said that they felt that that New Vance was not living up to the conditions of the original certificate of need when it had formed a larger group with Western Connecticut Health Network in 2019. And so we ran about 2 weeks ago the list of questions that OHS had presented to New Vance. This week we're presenting their answers. And, a lot of it is about recruitment and the promises from New Vance that they were going to bring doctors in here, which, of course, is harder than anticipated, especially with COVID. And, they're kind of giving their efforts, which is like, we offered a signing bonus. But people can make their own decision about that. And, of course, the state will consider that as they're looking at the new certificate of need request. But definitely the labor and delivery, an important question for our region, but statewide, as two other labor and delivery units are also being closed. And, of course, in a state like Connecticut, which is really working to try and increase the population of younger families, this is not a great development.
And a little story that's on the front page, which I talked about last week, and that is times change, the way things done are changed. But Histonic Valley Regional High School, Gilbert and Northwestern, they have gotten together and put a co-op football team together to play in the CIAC. Of course, Gilbert and Histonic, fierce rivals over the years, but the team went 6-2, made the state tournament. They lost in the state tournament, but 5 members of that team were from Histonic Valley Regional High School, and I just think it's great that those 5 students had the ability to play football and play with other students from other schools and actually make it to the state tournament.
And of course, it's a lot of commuting for all of these student athletes, but even within Region 1, I know that the hockey team this year is working at South Kent. That's a big drive for a lot of these students. But then you think about the Kent students who've been coming up here to Salisbury and Lakeville for their workouts. So they seem to be doing great on this team. Patrick Sullivan has covered football for the newspaper for many, many years and said, this team looks like it's got a lot of potential. It's a different combination than prior co-op teams, which have been less successful.
All right. Now, a story that we can't pass by, and that the Lakeville Journal has a new Chief Operating Officer.
Janet, I'm going to let you talk about this wonderful development.
Oh, sure. And as you'll see in the very first paragraph, James Clark of Salisbury has been with the Lakeville Journal since August of 2002. So he's a well-known entity. A lot of people know him in the community because he also does graphic arts out in the community to help many nonprofits. And he is just an amazing leader in our company. So as we're going into the nonprofit world, we decided it was time to take a look at the title he had and what he was actually doing. And this title of Chief Operating Officer actually does describe what he does on a day-to-day basis. So we're thrilled he's willing to take this title and move on with us and do so much to keep this little media company going.
It's nice when you look back and you see somebody who's been with your company 20 years. Those things don't seem to happen much anymore. But so it's great when you actually see it, and that person then advances through the different systems and moves on. HVA has stepped up. They're challenging. Of course, protect the area rivers. We hear about the tree cutting along the Histonic by the state, but the HVA is really a very good watchdog organization.
And actually, Leela Hawken is going to be attending the Cornwall Selectmen's meeting next, I think it's this week, where they're going to be talking about the cutting of those trees, many of which, it's important to note, many of which were dead and actually needed to be cut down. But people felt very strongly about that. And Maria Horn's been on top of it, to her credit, and is in more close conversation with the state about 2 upcoming planned tree clearing. And, of course, everybody can see trees are being cleared all along the roads, and the reason is they fall on not just on houses and cars, but they fall on the electrical lines. And we're all pretty happy when we don't lose power in winter, but it does change the landscape, and I think maybe a little more communication on their part would have been helpful. But HVA is the Histonic Valley Association. It helps monitor and protect the river valley, not the water necessarily, but what happens around the water. And it was their annual meeting. Deborah Alexinus was able to attend on Zoom, which is, we love Zoom. It's fantastic. And talking a little bit about the challenges that towns have always experienced here, with a lot of people coming up from other areas and not maybe taking as good care of the river as locals would, but also the importance of maybe making it welcoming and giving more explanation of how the river should be treated. And then they awarded Bob Valentine for all of his great work as a first selectman from, I think he's in Goshen, for protecting the river, and got a report on climate change. So a lot to read in that article.
One of the small stories, but SWASA has their pot pie dinner coming up at the White Hart on December 14th. And last year, they sold so many pot pies that people that wanted pot pies couldn't get them. So call and order early because I think last year they were going to sell 50 and they ended up selling 65. And they go quick. So if you want to support SWASA and get that pot pie dinner, contact the White Hart as soon as you can.
And of course, they have a new chef there, so it should be fantastic. And SWASA keeps organizing events, and then other people, they have annual events, and other people keep putting events at the same time next to them. So they have the ski and skate swap, which is huge, at the firehouse on the same day as the vendor fair and the Santa that the host company did, and it all worked out beautifully. And this year, the Vigil in honor of live loss at Sandy Hook, which Janet will talk about when she gets to her editorial, is also being held at the same time as the chicken pot pie. So Willie Hallahan and Sophia DeBoer and I were discussing it would be great if everybody who comes to the vigil gets a pot pie, and if everybody who gets a pot pie comes to the vigil to honor lives lost and remember the importance of gun control. Okay,
it is once again, it's still a takeout format for the pot pie, but it's a great. It's just SWASA and is just an amazing organization, as all the other organizations that have come back and do their events this year. On the next page, of course, you've got the Sharon tree lighting, the holiday tradition at the firehouse, and Noble, and also a story in Falls Village, which seems to be dragging on, and that they're uncertain on the MIRA plan.
So the MIRA is our region's trash disposal, and it's so boring for people to hear about infrastructure and maintenance, but it's so essential. And the plant had fallen so into disrepair that it can't be fixed, essentially, without costing more money than is worth the value of it. So they're going to close down our regional trash disposal plant, and that's a big deal. I think people don't realize that when they take their garbage to their town's transfer station, it's being transferred to an outdoor facility. It's not being burned. It's not being it's not being burned or buried here. It's being burned at MIRA. And so now the state is going to be looking at sending our trash out to other states that will contract to accept it and dispose of it. And a lot of the towns are looking at that and saying that's not sustainable, but also it's going to radically increase the cost of disposing of trash here. And many of our towns, it's very expensive to dispose of trash. Other towns, it's less expensive. They work very hard at separating out your trash into recyclables. Salisbury and Sharon are going to be looking into doing more composting, but all the towns have to sign on to this plan to send the trash out so that the state can begin to prepare its contracts, and they have a late December deadline on that.
All right, and in Kent, they have their holiday celebrations, and once again, the gingerbread houses are all spread throughout town.
So adorable. It's incredible how complex, and it's like when you see the scarecrows in Salisbury at the fall festival, and you think, boy, there's a lot of talented people around here. It's the same with the gingerbread houses. They're incredibly elaborate and beautiful. I mean, I'm happy if I can get all four walls to stand up, and I feel like that's an accomplishment. But these are really, really lovely. Many of them are gingerbread houses that show parts of life in Salisbury, such as the Appalachian Trail, cabins, and the covered bridge. So definitely worth a trip down to Kent. It's outdoors, it's COVID safe, and you can check out the new bakery, Sophia's, which has its own gingerbread house.
All right, and you've got a story about the ski areas opening up. Mohawk Mountain gearing up for another season. Catamount, which has now turned into a full-fledged resort, is gearing up for this season. And all they're waiting for is a longer stretch of cold weather. But they're all planning to open in one form or another in the next week or so.
Right, and at Mohawk, which of course is our own little local ski area. Last year, the instruction was that people really needed to be prepared to change into their ski gear in the car. And this year, you can buy your lift passes online. They're trying to reduce the amount of human contact. So, but excited to have it open, and of course, there is some snow out there today.
All right, I want to go on to the opinion pages, and Janet, we'll get to your editorial. 9 years, and yet not enough has changed. I don't think hardly anything has changed. The public still has outrage, and our lawmakers still don't act.
That's right. The only thing that has improved is the state law within Connecticut as far as gun control goes. But certainly, not enough. It's been 9 years since the Sandy Hook Elementary School shooting. It was December 14th, 2012. All of us who live here remember it as if it were yesterday. And, here we talk about what happened, what came out of it, and the fact that we're still having these school shootings today. It seemed the only thing that slowed them down was COVID and not having schools open at all. Is this really the path we have to take instead of controlling and monitoring guns so they don't get into the hands of people who are sick and violent? Our senators, Murphy and Blumenthal, are both committed to legislation, but, you need a majority to get this legislation through. If ever it could happen, you would think it could be now in the wake of 28 school shootings already this year, and this the most fatalities at Oxford High School in Michigan. This has to be something that our country addresses, or we will pay the price deeply as we already are.
I'm just tired of hearing excuses and extensions. Every other country in the world does not have this problem that we have. It's not nearly close to this level, and the rest of the world looks at us, and it really is an amazing thing when you look at it. So someone's got to get the courage to try to get something accomplished when it comes to schools and shootings and basically gun violence overall.
Right. It's astonishing when you realize that kids in school today are so attuned to how to escape a shooter, and they have drills not for fires as when we were kids, but for a shooter coming into the school, and they are all very aware of what to do.
And one of those drills paid off in that school because two classrooms, the kids and the students in those classrooms barred the doors like they were told to do, instructed to do, and the shooters could not get in. So those drills do work. Some parents think those drills get students more upset, but I'll tell you what, in those two classrooms, it saved lives, those drills.
And drills, and don't forget the duck and roll. Guys hiding under your desks in terms of nuclear, which
right.
I always thought was going to really,
it
was really going to help, right?
Yeah. But there are measures that can be taken against a shooter, and Marshall's right, and that is sad in itself. That this is how our kids have to live and think in all neighborhoods across the country. There are just too many guns out there and too many innocent victims. So do go to that vigil on December 14th on the White Hart Lawn to remember all victims of gun violence.
And right on the first page, you've got an incredibly long letter signed by a lot of people. Also, a letter out of Cornwall Bridge, which is, and a small letter about the sad-looking trees in Salisbury. And my response to that person is, this is the first year they've tried digital lights. Give them a break. Let them find out the lights that are brighter that work. Right.
They went to solar lighting, and there were many reasons why it was worth a shot, and it still is worth a shot. And you're right. I feel the same way. Let's use some of the Christmas spirit to not judge each other so harshly.
And you know, sooner or later, having those long extension cords running for so long, like I said, they'll work on this. They'll find the lights and the solar thing that are brighter. Now, look, they do this in Cornwall on the big tree every year now.
That's right.
That's totally
you can
lit
see
by
it now,
solar.
right?
Yeah, yeah. It's much better than it was the first
Because
year.
way
It's there.
back when it was
Yeah.
there was this sort of dim light. So it just. But Janet, I think you are absolutely right, and I think that it would not be a bad thing for everyone to adopt. How about a little of that spirit? How about a little positive? Just help it out.
But the letter about the permit is an interesting letter, though, from the Lakeville residents.
That's right. And you see there are many, many names on this, and it has to do with Park B. Smith, who is on Long Pond Road looking for a special permit to use property for philanthropic use. And so they explain in great depth what that may mean and their fears for the town and their neighborhood as far as what could change. So do give this a read and think carefully about it, and by all means, if it seems like it'll affect you, get involved.
And you've got Lonnie Carter and with Sovereign State, Peter Steiner, and the retired investor.
That's right. Lonnie is talking about Death and his production of Death of a Salesman that he did years ago at Sharon Playhouse. And I have to say, I saw that production. It was really good. So it's fascinating. You know, Lonnie has so many incredible memories, and so don't miss this one because, boy, there are all kinds of things he remembers that make us see what formed our society today.
All right, we've got about 2 minutes left, and Cynthia, Compass.
Well, I'm going to quickly throw in that the Park Smith plan is going to be in a public hearing on Zoom on December 13th, and that same night, Lakeville is going to be discussing the possibility of a new high-end Italian restaurant in what has been the Firehouse and is now Leslie Eckstein's Gym. So those are going to be two interesting hearings. People can just sign in by Zoom. It's very easy to watch. You don't have to sit in a room. You can listen and participate, and it ties into Leila Hawkins' article on page A6 B5, about parking challenges in Canaan. So there's a town with a boom of Renaissance, great new businesses opening up, but struggling now with parking. And again, if our towns want to have economic development, they're going to have to figure out parking for all of these new businesses. So Compass, we've got Charles Dickens. It's the holiday season, and of course, for the British in Victorian era, Christmas is a time to think about ghosts and the return of our loved ones, the moment when they could interface with the living again. Carl Chayette and some other artists have a show at the Kent Art Association, a very active, interesting little place. You can just walk in. We've got the hours there. Student films. Jonas Sada from Falls Village, but also Bard College at Simon's Rock, which is for younger students who are attending college early, was one of the winning filmmakers. The list of other films is there from Berkshire Taconic Community Foundation. Jane Austen. A Jane Austen Christmas coming up at the Tina Packer Theater at Shakespeare and Company. It's a series of plays that have been written about what would happen after all of the Bennett sisters are married and going on with their later lives, and their annual Christmas celebrations should be very funny. Richard O'Connor, formerly of Salisbury and Lakeville, now living in Sharon, and a respected psychotherapist who's dealt a lot with depression. His new book on fighting depression, undoing depression, is out. I think it's in its third printing, so a nice talk he gave in Sharon. Leila Hawkins writes about it, and I have not gone up to Hancock's Shaker Village in Pittsfield, but I am going to because they do interesting stuff, and this year they're having a show of lights.
That's great. And don't miss the last-minute holiday shopping banner. Shop locally.
All right. We'll speak to you guys next week.
Thank you so much.
Take care. That is This Week in the Lakeville Journal. Of course, you can find the Lakeville Journal at tricornernews.com on the web.